been scrolling through Goodreads or hearing your friend talk about the new book they just read when all of a sudden you're hit with some kind of feeling? Wait, where have I seen this before? Hello and welcome back! Today I wanted to mix things up a little bit, but this is also something I've been wanting to do for a long time since this channel is supposed to be my creative outlet. If you don't know this about me, I was actually an English major in college and I loved every second of it. I love analyzing stories and themes, finding similarities, differences, and I actually almost enjoy doing that more with like my personal like reading adventures instead of doing it for school even. The inspiration behind this video is that I feel as if no two books could ever be exactly the same. I know we say sometimes like there's books that resemble each other or they're oddly similar to one another, but my professors for my fiction writing class when I was in college said even if two people have the same idea, since they are entirely different people, the ideas cannot be a one-for-one recreation. So I thought it would be fun to start a vlog series kind of reading these books that sound similar, talking about the similarities and maybe some of the differences and just the journey with those books. So for this video, I'm going to be reading Blue Sisters by Coco Mellors and Hello Beautiful by Ann Napolitano. And I'm so excited to dive in, but if you like this one, I'll hopefully be doing more. And this was actually really fun to sit down with these two books, but let's dive in. I'm going to start reading Blue Sisters by Coco Mellors. We're following three sisters who have to come together after their fourth sister has passed away, and it's not only them navigating this new family dynamic of a loved one passing away, but also navigating the previous dynamics that they had, and they've been estranged, and how do they come together and how do they move forward with this but also like build space for each other. And it's going to be a really great depiction of grief. I've been reading a lot of books about grief lately. It's just kind of like fallen into that category, but I'm excited to jump into this and to see how it compares to Cleopatra and Frankenstein. All right, I read a little bit more of Blue Sisters today while I was at work. I'm still in my corporate getup currently, but I'm about, I think I'm like 55 pages in currently, and I am loving this so much. Once again, Coco Mellors' writing is something I absolutely devour. Like the way that she describes characters, it's incredible. It makes you feel like they are very real people, but also her descriptions let you know more about the people without telling you like he had blue eyes. Like in particular, there was one part where she's describing what the father of the four sisters was like, and she said he was the house. Like not only saying like, did he have like a foreboding presence over the house, but everything that happened in there he knew about, or he was in control of like the rest of their moods and things. The way that she wrote that was so interesting, and I learned so much about their dad without the, you know, physical details and descriptions. So I loved that. I also love, we've dove into two of the sisters so far. We've dove into Lucky and Bonnie a little bit. I really like Bonnie. Like, I don't know if I relate to her just in the sense of like, I'm a bit more on like the muscular side of things and whatnot, but the tenderheartedness, I so related to how she felt. And then the way that they describe her connection with Nikki, the other sister, has been really, really powerful too. I've enjoyed that dynamic. As an example of the writing in this book, I have to read the opening page because it immediately drew me in. A sister is not a friend. Who can explain the urge to take a relationship as primal and complex as a sibling and reduce it to something as replaceable, as banal as a friend? Yet the status is used again and again to connotate the highest intimacy. My mother is my best friend. My husband is my best friend. No, true sisterhood, the kind where you grew fingernails in the same womb, were pushed screaming through identical birth canals, is not the same as friendship. You don't choose each other, and there's no furtive period of getting to know each other. You're part of each other right from the start. Look at an umbilical cord, tough, sinuous, unlovely, yet essential. And compare it to the friendship bracelet of brightly woven thread. That is the difference between a sister and a friend. How do you just start a book like that? How do you start a book like that? I already know that I'm going to rate this book highly. Love it. But anyways, little monster was chewing on my notebook full of notes. Hey buddy, I'll let you get back to that. Next thing I'm gonna do, I have some holds at the library ready to be picked up, and I have some overdue books. So I'll probably take you along with me to not only make the returns, but to show you what I'm gonna pick up as well. With another update on the book, but I'm changing up angles a little bit, trying out new things. And it's also really rainy outside right now, so the lighting is not helping the case very much. But I not only wanted to give an update on Blue Sisters, but I also wanted to talk about some books that I hauled this weekend, because went out for a wedding and there was a half-price books within driving distance, so of course we had to go and check it out and make sure that the quality there was good, you know. I also got some stickers, which is really fun. Like, I've added to my journal. It originally had just these 4, and now I have the Avatar sticker, the 6 of Crows, No Mourners, No Funerals, and then a Black Clover sticker, of course. So, but it's getting there. I really only have like one more spot I can work with, and maybe just like some smaller ones that can go here. But I'm really loving how my reading journal had turned out. Anyways, okay. So, update on Blue Sisters. I am on page 222. I have about 100 pages left, so we're in the 3rd act of the story. And thankfully, all the sisters have actually like come together, because they lived at different parts, and now they're coming together to deal with the apartment that their parents are selling. This book is still incredible, and I'm incredibly enjoying it still, except I've just had to read it in chunks, like, because I've been busy. I went to my best friend's wedding this last weekend, which was a great time, but it didn't really give a lot of opportunity to sit down and read. So a lot of it's been very chunked, but I could see myself, if I was given the opportunity, to sit and read through this entire thing if I could. But, oh, my cat has the zoomies, so if you hear miscellaneous shuffling in the background, that's him. He's very excited that we're home. Overall, my favorite part about the book is the themes that have been explored. This book does a fantastic job of not only doing like a character study of the different characters, but bringing them together with central themes that I've really been latching onto. That's the part where I feel like I'm flipping the pages as quickly as I can. There was one part that was written about chronic pain that was so realistic that I could like feel it, because I've had some chronic pain issues in the last couple of years that have been like progressing, and the way that she wrote about it was, it hit home in a way that I've never seen someone write like that before. Just to know that that's something that a lot of people go through, this book could resonate with you on that. There was a lot of talk about that, and then I also loved addiction is another theme entirely on its own, but Mellors like found a way to bring them together, and talking about how someone with chronic pain, the way they go about it is similar to someone with like addiction, because you're constantly thinking about it, you're trying to find the next quick fix that might help, or trying to like figure out what's next, what can I do, I need something to change the state that I'm in. And that I've never seen that comparison done before, and it's done so artfully in this book. It's so interesting, and it's like complex and fleshed out and very thoughtful. Like, I would have never thought of putting the two together until reading this book. Another major theme that Coco Mellors goes over in depth, but like spread throughout the book, is themes of like woman bodily autonomy and just how society sees our bodies in general. Like, one of the sisters, Lucky, is a model, and her entire life, like, her body depends on her job, and they go hand in hand. And one of the other sisters, Bonnie, is a boxer, and she kind of has like the same thing. So there's like a parallel draw between the two, but you kind of see one as much more like feminine and desirable, whereas the other one is much more brutish and, you know, physicality, like strength. But it's so interesting because they have the same conversation about how their jobs are wholly dependent on their physical experiences, and like that people comment on their bodies all the time, even though they know nothing of the craft that they're doing. And the two seem very different at the beginning. The two seem completely different, but they're dealing with the same internal struggles with that, which I find so interesting. I'm a huge litfic fan because of themes like this, and I can't wait to see how this wraps up. This is definitely a 4-star read. It's probably gonna be a 5, just depending. Look who came zooming by. And I can't mention that I went to Half Price Books without showing you the book selections that I got here. So the first one I want to show you is I got If We Were Villains by M.L. Rio, which this was my favorite book of last year. I absolutely love this story. I still have the receipt in here. This story is a dark academia story following our main character Oliver, and Oliver went to a very like prestigious elite college for Shakespearean plays. So he is an actor that was in this college with like 5 other classmates, and there was only like 6 of them left because the school is so ruthless. Most people don't even make it out. But this story follows Oliver in prison. He's just getting out of prison after like years, and apparently he was put there for the allegations of killing one of his 6 classmates. The cop that was on the investigation like has a conversation with him, and he's like, I can't do anything about it now, but I want to know what happened. And it's Oliver recounting the story and bringing us along with him. And there were so many times where I had no idea who like the actual killer was. This story's been compared to The Secret History on multiple occasions. It's something that I think you should definitely read in the fall as well, because it made me feel like I was reading for academia all over again. But this is one of my favorite books, and I'm happy to own a copy now. Next book that I got was Tress of the Emerald Sea. I finally found the paperback for a decent price, so of course I had to get it. It's Brandon Sanderson. How could you not get it? But, and it also kind of matches my shirt today too, so we love that. But Tress of the Emerald Sea is about Tress, and she is in love with this guy. I'm not sure exactly what his name is, but he's like a prince of another land, and he gets whisked away, and the story's about her saving him, which I kind of love, but she has to travel across this treacherous sea where the world is made up of like spores that descend from the sky, and they're like poisonous. So if they have contact with water at all, they become like poisonous fungus essentially. So she's crossing this very treacherous sea to help the one that she loves, and the story just seems like it's very fun. And I also love that this is not like traditional Brandon Sanderson. Apparently he wrote this for his wife, which I think is absolutely adorable. Like if I had a husband who wrote me a book, I would love that. But it sounds like it's much more fun, and while the stakes are still kind of high, they're not as high as his other epic fantasies. But I'm very excited to read this. Next up, I'm very excited about these. They're actually a collection of S.E. Hinton books. So S.E. Hinton, if you don't know, is the person who wrote The Outsiders. And I absolutely love The Outsiders. Like that was one of the books that like really made me want to read and read for themes. But I collect different editions of The Outsiders, and this is the Platinum edition. So it's a nice floppy paperback. And I own the 40th edition and the 50th edition. So this is being added to the list. But it's just like collecting different versions of that book. The other book that I got is That Was Then, This Is Now by S.E. Hinton. This book is so good, so underrated. S.E. Hinton was a young writer, super talented. I figured most people probably know what The Outsiders is about, but That Was Then, This Is Now is actually my favorite S.E. Hinton book. This was the book that made me realize I loved reading, and like if I am invested in the story, I will not stop reading. This follows 2 brothers. They're not actual brothers, but they like were raised like they were brothers, and it's Brian and Mark. It's dealing with how they're going into high school and growing apart from one another, but getting caught up in very different crowds. Brian is much more like straight-laced and follows the rules, whereas Mark is starting to go through a bit of a rebellious phase, and it ultimately results in one of them making a decision that changes the course of their relationship forever. But this is navigating a coming of age story. Very interesting, very like darker themes for such a young adult novel, but I really loved this one. If anyone has ever read this book, please tell me, because I love this so much. Final book that I have is also an S.E. Hinton book, and that's Hawks Harbor. Now, I've never heard of this one before, but this was published way after a lot of her other books. So in this, we're following a psychiatrist who works at an asylum, and he's very interested in the new patient that's come in, and he's made it like his goal to take it upon himself to help this patient conquer his demons. And that's kind of like all I know going into it. I'm very intrigued to see how much of like the psychology this dips into, and like what the patient is here for, and like what the commentary on mental health was, because this book was written back in 2004. So I'm imagining it's way different from, 20 years from the future, how we view mental health now. But yeah, I'm very excited to see if her writing still resonates with me in a book that I've never read before. So. I apologize if you can hear my cat's ball jingling in the background. He's having some fun with the toy right now. But I'm checking in because I finally finished Blue Sisters by Coco Mellors, and I'm for sure giving this book a 5 stars. This was exactly the type of literary fiction book that I love, exploring deeper themes centered around a family drama, and the different perspectives were all very distinct, which I appreciated because we were following different sisters. I maybe have mentioned this previously, but I think the most interesting aspect of this book were the comparisons to being an addict and chronic pain. That kind of intersection was one I never really thought of before, and Coco Mellors makes some striking points where I was like, holy crap. Speaking of like striking things, the writing in this, like, there were so many vocabulary words that I didn't know, but yet like reading them I was like, oh yeah, that sounds right there. Yeah, that's great. The story flies by. It's told with a lot of heart, you can tell, and the way that they did like flashbacks were kind of nice too, because like the writing was actually just like in italics as opposed to like you can tell when it's in present tense. But I don't know if I like this one better or if I like Cleopatra and Frankenstein. I think I like this one just a little bit better, because I feel like with Cleopatra and Frankenstein, we really only got into the heads of Cleo and Frank and then maybe one other person. But in this, I feel like I know the sisters so well at this point. And like Avery and Lucky have so many things to work through. Like, yikes, all these women need therapy. But I do have to give this book back to the library because I rented a copy. So support your local libraries. And I think I'm going to jump into my next book for this little vlog video. But 5 stars, Coco Mellors, new favorite author. Anything that she writes, I'm going to read at this point. And while we're here, I'm going to jump into the next book that I'm going to be reading for this video, and that is Hello Beautiful by Ann Napolitano. So this book follows at first I thought it was a similar setup to Blue Sisters, but we are following a family that has 4 sisters, and this is like an extended family drama. So that element is very similar, but we also get a male perspective in this book. So there are 2 characters that I've like read from so far, and that's William and Julia. So they grew up very differently. Like William's family, not close at all. He had a really rough childhood with the passing of his sister. Julia, on the other hand, had a very loud Italian family, always together, very poor, but like would make it work, you know? So William grew up very like privileged and always had money on the table, but not the emotional support. And then Julia had the opposite going on, where the emotional support was there, but paying the bills was the difficult part. So the 2 meet in college, and They meet through like a history class, and Julia's like immediately smitten with William because he's really tall and very intelligent and plays basketball, and she was like, I'm all about that. So we're following those two as they progress their relationship and start to integrate William into her family a bit more. So it's still in the beginning stages of the story, but I read these pages so fast. Like, it just felt like whoop, 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 whoop the whole time. It was so good. And it was one of those moments where I actually forgot to look at my clock and see what the time was, which those moments are hard to come by sometimes. So I'm kind of hoping that the rest of the book is like that for me too. And this book is extra special because it's actually my coworker's copy. She said, you need to read this, here you go, and handed it to me. So I can't wait to talk to her about it. I'll actually be really interested to see like her thoughts and opinions once we finally have our discussion, because the coworker that gave me this book, she's actually in her 60s and I'm in my 20s. So there's a lot of like generational differences between the two of us. So I wonder if some of the same themes hit home for us or where the differences lie. But I'm just happy that she even let me borrow this because I've been wanting to read it for a while and this is a great excuse. But I'm excited to jump back into this and I'll keep you posted on what I think. So now I'm following up. I just finished Hello Beautiful a few days ago at this point in time. And, oh, we have a visitor. Hold on. I finished Hello Beautiful and Cal is very excited about the lights right now. So, I just wanted to hop on here and like wrap up my final thoughts with the book. I would say it's about a 4-star, 3.75 star for me. Alright, he's about to say goodbye. Bye! But it was a longer book than I thought it was going to be. Sometimes with more literary fiction type stories, I feel like I usually fly through them, but this one I felt like I had to scan every single line, every single detail, because if you don't know, this story spans multiple generations, so like by the time we're done with it, like we're going over the course of like 30 years of these people's lives. This is a retelling of Little Women, which, put your pitchforks down, I've never read Little Women before. I know my coworker was appalled when I told her that when she was the one that gave me this book. But so I don't really know how to compare it to Little Women. I don't really know how accurate of a retelling it was, but I can tell you that I still enjoyed the story quite a bit. It's definitely much more of a character focused story, and it's much more of like a character driven story too, so there's not like a huge overarching plot. It's just kind of like these are these people that live in this place and this is what happens over the course of their life. There is some pretty juicy drama that happens in this, to the point where like I don't know if I would have made the same choice as one of the sisters did, but like I'm not surprised she made the choice eventually. At first I didn't know how it was going to work, but the more you read, if you know what I'm talking about, the more you see why like she made the decision and everything. Julia is kind of like unhinged. She's one of the people that we follow. She's the eldest sister. And I don't know why, but like it always felt like when I was reading from her perspective, it was like a tension rod that was about to snap at any second. She definitely liked things her way and in a particular manner, and if she wasn't really getting that, she kind of just threw it off to the side, like a who cares kind of mentality. The mom was also like so problematic, honestly. If you've read it, you know why, but we follow the 4 sisters, which are Julia, Emmeline, Cecilia, and Sylvie. It's those 4, and then we also follow a perspective from Julia's husband, William. And I found William to be like super sad as a character, honestly, but also like deeply relatable on like a personal, like emotional type level. Like you just feel for him by the end of the story. He deals with a lot of parental neglect and trauma, and also a really bad sports injury, which was, as someone who's dealt with that before, that was really difficult to read at points because of how accurate it was, which is a testament to the author, really. I think the most compelling part of William's story was his search for purpose, and for so long he had had people telling him what he would be good at, but he finds basketball, which is the sport that he really enjoys, and that was the first time that he discovered that was what he wanted to do. And I can respect a story like that so much. That was really great to follow his journey from start to finish. I really enjoyed his character arc. felt like in the end the story was a little predictable for what was going to happen. I thought that the author stitched the story together really well. I enjoyed learning more about the characters, and I liked how it was like a timepiece too. Like we started in like the 60s or 70s and it spanned all the way up to like the early 2000s. So all of those pieces were really nice to see, and it kind of made me feel nostalgic in a way too. Okay, now that I've finished both reading Blue Sisters and Hello Beautiful, I'm going to do the breakdown on the comparison. Because once I first heard the synopses for these two books, I was like, wow, they sound kind of similar, like four sisters, generational trauma, and drama. But I was expecting it to be a lot more similar, I guess, but that was also before I figured out that Hello Beautiful was a retelling of Little Women, in a way. But I just kind of wanted to go through the general similarities between the two stories, and then I won't talk too much about the differences. If you can hear my cat, I'm so sorry. I won't talk too much about the differences that are like spoiler related, obviously. First thing I'll go over is kind of like the more obvious thing, which is it deals with four sisters that have very complicated relationships with each other. Except one of the sisters in Blue Sisters, it's revealed like in the beginning, like as part of the synopsis, that she has passed away. So there's really only three sisters that we're following in Blue Sisters, and we learn about the other sister through the stories told. Whereas we follow the four sisters in Hello Beautiful, but we get perspectives from two, but the other two characters are pretty relevant throughout. Just how the two authors depicted like sister dynamics, it seemed very like on point. I have had a stepsister before, but like I don't have that familial bond with a sister, but I do have a brother, and I know what it's like to have like a close sibling relationship, and you could really see that once like the sisters had like come together, there was that unity, which I really enjoyed. So the strong sisterhood was definitely one of the major things that I saw that was similar between these two books. So the second thing I'm going to talk about is something that I did not expect in either of the stories, and that was the depiction of chronic pain. Like there was really, really good representation for chronic pain. I actually have had chronic pain for like 6 years now, so seeing it like in stories, and not only in two stories, but two stories I read back to back. Whoa, I was feeling a certain kind of way after a while. In Blue Sisters, it's more of like a like woman-related pain, like female experience pain, whereas in Hello Beautiful, I had mentioned this earlier, but William had a sports injury, a stress-induced like sports injury that never fully healed properly because he didn't take the precautions when he was younger and dealt with the repercussions for most of his life. Just talking about the pain was so real in my eyes. And I love how in Blue Sisters, Coco Mellors ties it into addiction. Like she actually had a quote that compared it to addiction. And I don't have the book with me anymore because I had to return it to my library, but I wonder if I wrote down the quote. I'm gonna see. Okay, so I didn't write it down, which makes me a little bummed because it was really, really good. But it was basically equating like how people deal with chronic pain to having an addiction and constantly needing like a fix of some kind and like hoping that there's some kind of like cure out there, and you're just like so laser focused and hyper fixated on finding that cure or thing that's gonna bring you like a pain-free experience. But tied in with chronic pain, both stories also touched on grief quite a bit. I expected it in Blue Sisters, obviously, because right from the gun, you know, or right from the start, you know that one of the sisters has gone, and that's kind of what propels the plot to move forward. But in Hello Beautiful, I was not expecting there to be such a raw depiction of different types of grief too. Not only like grieving the loss of, you know, a loved one, but also grieving the loss of like a relationship with someone too. Like one of the major like themes is like a fallout in this book, and they were grieving like that missing person in their life too, which I think that's so interesting that we don't talk enough about that kind of grieving and dealing with like our emotions. But yeah, those were two of the major themes that I saw throughout the story, both very interesting, done very well. I enjoyed them. So the third point that I want to cover is generational trauma was a huge part of this story, specifically talking about parental trauma too. Neither of these sets of sisters had good parents. They were people who definitely had their own faults but didn't really want to look inward too much, and it projected onto their children quite a bit too. I think the interesting part was the way that the authors wrote from the children's perspective, the children being like, you know, the main characters, from their perspectives talking about their parents and kind of like seeing these faults. I like how it wasn't so much as like oh, my parents are like everything to me, yada yada yada, but they like showed that they're real people too. In Hello Beautiful, William has the worst of the parental trauma, and if you read it you understand, but his parents like do not care about him at all. So he has this whole journey of trying to figure out how to navigate this trauma, but he doesn't even know what his trauma is because he doesn't make any friends. He lives a very lonely life for most of his time. Specifically, I want to touch on the generational trauma with the mothers too. I feel like that was definitely talked about more than the dads. Like the dads were kind of like the reason that the mom had so much trauma, even because of like the strain of the marriage and how it affected the kids and how mothers are expected to, you know, give so much more for the kids than the fathers sometimes. Especially in Blue Sisters, like the way that they would talk about their mom, like it was one of those things where it's like loving someone is one thing, but oh gosh, wait, I did write down that quote, hold on. It was easy to love someone in the beginnings and ends, but all the time in between that was hard. Oh my gosh, that is so true. And not only just talking, that's like any relationship really though, but specifically I could see how that would be tied into like the familial and like mother relationships. Yeah, but there were a lot of great quotes that I didn't stop to write down because there were so many good ones in Blue Sisters. I loved that book. And so the fourth point kind of ties into something that I had alluded to originally, but I really thought that the conversation about who we see as family and like what family means was really interesting in both of these stories. I feel like this point may have been touched on just a little bit more in Hello Beautiful, but it's also really present in Blue Sisters because their like definition of family didn't necessarily have to include like their parents. They had their sisterhood, you know, and like their significant others could be part of that family as well. Whereas like in Hello Beautiful, we get most of like the really deep portrayals of what it means to have family through William's eyes. Can you tell that he was my favorite character in the book? And not that like the other characters were lackluster in any way, it's just like seeing from his perspective, he was probably studied the deepest because he had the most to kind of unpack. You know, he's kind of like adopted by his wife's family and taken in, and like he only realized he had trauma was because he was taken in by a family that like did care about each other, and you could see that, and like the little things that like add up. So he was having a hard time grappling with the fact that he didn't have that kind of family, but he had to go make that kind of family. I'm gonna wrap everything up here. So this was a new type of like vlogging experience that I wanted to try out. Obviously it's like my first vlog, so it's probably not going to be very good. I enjoy kind of like taking stories that sound somewhat similar and like analyzing where those similarities lie. Even though two stories have a similar premise, that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be reading the exact same thing word for word or having the exact same emotions with both of the stories. Hopefully you enjoyed this series. Hopefully you go read Blue Sisters after this because I really loved that book and Coco Mellors' writing. Well, that's where I'm going to wrap it up here. So thank you for joining me on my first vlogging experience. I'll probably try to do other vlogs at some point. I just always forget to like record things in the moment, you know, but I would like to do more of like these oddly similar things. Next time I'll probably try like a different genre. And if you have suggestions, like please let me know. That would be really fun to try it out. If you made it this far into the video, thank you for spending some time with me. Make sure to leave a like and comment, subscribe if you're feeling it, and follow me on Instagram. That's linked in the description as well. But I will see you next time. Bye!